we held a celebration on the 19th anniversary of our club founding. And the founders of our club, they go all in front of us and celebrate Betty's 90th birthday. We had 95 people show up, and it raised over $87. And we get about $6,000 for our club, which I'm excited. I think there are three big reasons this event succeeded, and there were some valuable lessons we learned that we can talk about later. Number one, luck. The event came about because Betty fell and broke 2 ribs in January. And she's okay, but I realized how lucky we are to have those first round. And so I decided we needed to celebrate. And as a Catherine Betty's birthday was just a couple of days before, in August for some bizarre reason. So we had the luck to celebrate 3 big events all at once. Persistence, this might be the most important. I'm proud to admit that I'm something PETA, pain in the ass. Right. Always happened, always will be. And I called, wrote, and wrote support. Then he gave me a list of support with both elected party, and I contacted many of them. And I kept contact over and over. Even folks who didn't actually represent our club, but whose campaigns have been held by members of our club directly, or the Go team, which Betty founded. Also, our club president, Alan Rossi, and our vice president, Soulier, kept mentioning the event when they attended the many county meetings that attended regularly, especially over the last couple of weeks. We know what you all know. Folks don't pay any attention to anything until the week before, and rarely RSV. This next order is really difficult. The rest of it, not likely to be long. And lastly, sympathy. As I mentioned at number 1, I felt it was important to honor our founders. So that even though I knew back in January I had a rotator cuff and I was surgery this done, and as we got to about May or so, I kept kidding. I would get a cancellation opportunity for surgery the week before this event. I was only off by 4 days. Surgery was August the 1st. However, once I knew the date, I just kept telling everybody on our board and everybody I talked to, I need your help, I need your help, I need your help. And people came together. It was nerve-wracking until the end. And so what I heard in the fall with the last meeting, that they have not only the fundraising chair, but an events chair for their 20th anniversary coming up. I am just super impressed, and it is something that I say. I've got lessons learned later, and I'm going to hand this over to Ryan.
Thank you, Carol. Good afternoon, everybody. Ryan Trabuco, President of the Democrats for Equality, and then also Secretary for the Center Democratic Club. So one of the things, at least for Dems for Equality, as far as fundraising, we have always historically had a very robust fundraising effort for our club. Pre-pandemic, our average has usually been about, we've raised $50,000 every year. And part of that is because for the primary election and for the general election, we always do our own club voter guides that we mail out to all of our club members. And then we get a list of voters throughout the county from same-sex households that we don't know if they're specifically LGBT because you can't get that information specifically. But traditionally, if they're same-sex households, like primarily around Hillcrest and North Park, chances are they're probably LGBT, right? So we would do our voter guides and mail those out to them. And that's one of the reasons why our club has been very successful in electing LGBT candidates. And that goes all the way back to actually 30 years ago. And we're going to approach the 30th anniversary of electing Christine Kehoe to San Diego City Council District 3, which, for those of you that don't know, Council District 3 in San Diego has the longest record of LGBT representation of any government office in the United States. So that started with Christine Kehoe, went to Tony Atkins, went to Todd Gloria, went to Chris Ward, and now is Stephen McBurn. So for our fundraising, one of the things, and I love the fact that you're doing the fundraisers in San Marcos around Founders Day, the thing and the advice that I give to a lot of clubs is find something that is unique for your club. It's like if you're a geographic club or if you're an affinity club, and kind of build your fundraising events around your identity. So for example, with Fallbrook, there's a lot of avocados in Fallbrook. There's a lot of farms in Fallbrook. So like a farm to market kind of fundraiser in Fallbrook, I think would be very successful. San Marcos, you've got the Founders Day because that club is approaching 20 years. Our club is approaching 50 years in 2025. So that's something that I think our board is going to start really thinking about as far as branding for our club and any kind of like big 50th anniversary fundraising events as we lead up to 2025. Another thing that I would recommend, and actually this goes back to a conversation that Intro and I had not too long ago. For the AAPI Democratic Club, one of their big races last election cycle was electing Kent Lee to the San Diego City Council in District 6, because we have never had a Democratic member of the council from the AAPI community on city council. So electing someone like Kent Lee, who comparatively could be like a Christine Kehoe for that club, that gives you a significant election victory, and it gives you an elected official who can then build, and you can build your fundraising events around that election. Which goes back into my next point about when you elect these Democrats. Yes, we've had conversations earlier in some of the workshops today about making sure that we hold our elected officials accountable. What you don't want to do is elect Democrats, endorse Democrats, and then spend the rest of the year shitting on your Democratic elected officials. Because then when you have fundraising events, when you go to, Assembly Member Main Shine or something for a Hewlett Weber, and they, you ask them to help them fundraise for you, and they realize, oh, well, you've been, criticized by votes in Sacramento or whatever, they're not going to be that, interested in helping fundraise, right? So for any Democratic club, always keep a good relationship with your elected officials. And especially we just went through a special election, Supervisor District 4. There were some clubs that endorsed Monica Montgomery Step. There were some clubs that endorsed Janessa. For a lot of the clubs that endorsed Janessa, we didn't do any negative campaigning on Monica because we do. Statistically, it was possible that Monica would be the only Democrat moving forward. There was a possibility that Janessa could have been the only Democrat moving forward, or there was a possibility of both Democrats moving forward. So what you don't want to do is get into a situation where you're criticizing Democrats that don't endorse, because in the event that you have to support them, if they're the only Democrat moving forward, you don't want to really put yourself in those awkward conversations, whether it's for political support, whether it's for fundraising, etc. So yeah, we can get into a Q&A and a larger discussion unless there's any questions that you have, moderator. So I'll turn it back over to Indra.
Thank you much. Okay, so again, you have two amazing, great best practices here. Amazing people to raise funds, and as we all know, campaigns, candidates, clubs, you gotta eat and eat money. Sorry, that's not the whole part. All right. Okay, so I guess we'll open this up for any questions. And if you just want to stand up and say your name and what club you're representing, then ask your questions.
Hi, Jeff Beacon from the Fallbrook Democratic Club. I had a question for you regarding your fundraiser. Could you tell us what type of fundraiser you did? That sounds like a great return on.
It was fun, rather than doing a big formal event, which, we just had the Roosevelt dinner in April. We had the Roosevelt dinner in April. People got all their stuff for that. I thought people would enjoy something a little more casual. So we rented the Red Barn, which is a historic building, and just made it a very casual event. We brought in, there's a small shop in San Marcos that caters a lot of the city events. They stand and charcuterie boards thing. I had her do that. We brought in ice cream because yes, and cupcakes, of course, because it was Betty's birthday. We had to celebrate. But it was casual. And so I think people enjoyed that, that they didn't have to get stuff on what we knew was going to be a hot August day. I will say we were extremely lucky. The weather was kind to us, and instead of being in the 90s, it was like 83. So it was much better. But I think casual, you gotta look at when you want to have it and who you're trying to bring, and just trying to make something that people felt comfortable and drop in, and just being a casual event, I think worked.
follow-up, you said, I think you said 90 people attend.
95 people,
And you raised $8,800.
87.
Seven.
That was gross. It was, we netted about $6,000. Yeah.
Almost $100. I think.
No, and we had several very generous people. We had a couple of $500 donations. We had $300. These are ones that resonate. We had several 250s. What we did was we created on our Facebook page, not our Facebook page, our website, a place where people could go to donate. Our only problem with that is we want to take PayPal, so they can either do PayPal or send checks. So we, and they did, you know, some people did one, some people did the other. It would be nice, and I say this going forward, and we had this conversation, it would be nice if we could take other donations, credit cards, but it was, yeah.
Right, and on the PayPal thing, I think that goes back to a larger conversation that Indra and I have actually been having offline. I know, even though I'm secretary of the Claremont Democratic Club, I used to be the president of the Claremont Democratic Club. Nicole Crosby is our new president. One of the things that we're looking at doing in Claremont is switching our membership payment software. We used to use Square. We never wanted to use PayPal because PayPal, for those that don't know, is owned by Peter Thiel, who I think is running one of the Ron DeSantis super PACs or whatever. So every time you use PayPal, you know, even though it's supporting a Democratic club, you know, part of that goes back to PayPal. So part of that transaction is probably going to one of the Republican super PACs. So we kind of want to have a discussion, at least in club development, that I know some people have brought up about trying to find what is a good payment membership software, credit card,
whatever platform that we use to accept payments, because again, some take a bigger cut, some take a bigger cut, some take a lesser cut. Some will contribute to Republican super PAC. So it is being aware of what we're accepting. Again, I did see we had a question in the back.
Living our values, I think, is what we
Absolutely, 100%. Yeah. So, Todd?
Yeah. Well, one of the specifics that blue the DOD for the Democratic food for Gators. We would really like that. But my question is more about I feel like activity for higher donations. Sounds like in this case people happen to donate $500, $300, but I'm curious if there's like a attempt to get higher donations or let's get 25 people are happy together. That's great.
We actually, the cake was set up so that we have several donor levels with 500 being the most. Yeah, we were trying to be realistic with the target audience. It would have been great to get more. I was grateful to get the $500. We had probably 4 or 5, so I was thrilled to get those.
Right, another idea for clubs, something that we're talking about at Claremont Democratic Club, Dems for Quality has done this for a number of years, where for our memberships, we have tiered memberships. So normally some clubs will say, hey, if you pay us $30 or pay us $40 or $20, you get the membership. But if there's individuals in your club who obviously can afford to donate more to your club, creating a membership tiered system, like for us at Dems for Quality, we do have a $500 level. For some of the more, like gay attorneys or whatever that can afford to give us $500. And to be fair, I mean, we do have a number of them, and every year we have about a good 10 or 12 members that pay that $500 level for our club. And if you do the math on that, that's like $6,000 to $7,000 just in membership alone. So we have the 500, we have the 250, we have 125, and then our regular member is 40. But even then, just to make it economically advantageous for folks that can't afford that, we have a $20, what we call the activist level, just so we can get folks in who, obviously may not be economically able to pay even the 40, let alone the $500.
Right.
So,
question.
yes.
What do you recognize publicly those people who give higher levels? Because we also have a tiered membership.
Yes.
What do you do to acknowledge them publicly, and are they okay with that? Do you give free prior permission?
Yes. So for all, if any of you get our Dems for Quality, I know Al in our email list for Dems for Quality. Some people in here are on the email list. So if you look at our email list, we have what's called the President's Circle, which is the $500 membership. So anybody that donates at that level, we add them to that President's Circle list. And I mean, you've seen it. There's like, there's probably like 20 names on that list, right? So that's how we do that. So every email and every communication that we send out, if they have given at that $500 level, we put that in every single email communication, even though it's down at the bottom. You don't want to necessarily put it on top because you want to see if there's any kind of recent news or meeting news or whatever, endorsement news for your members. But at least we acknowledge all of those individuals that have donated at that level on every single email communication that goes out for our club. And then the one question I do want to say about Act Blue, I know in Claremont, we're looking at Act. One of the challenges that Act Blue has is that Act Blue works if your club, like for example, Dems for Quality uses Act Blue. I know that YIMBY Dems, I think, uses Act Blue. YIMBY Dems and Dems for Quality both also have PACs. So if you have a political action committee, that makes it a lot easier for Act Blue to work with you, because there's a way to like track that, because campaign finance, whatever. Claremont Democratic Club does not have a PAC. So that's one of the barriers that we're running up against. But at the same time, the one question I could say, I know there was a presentation about PACs earlier, there's people that might want to tell you that every single Democratic club should be a PAC. It really depends on how active your club is, because running a political action committee, I tell you, is not something we want volunteers to do. If you're going to have a political action committee, you need to hire a professional treasurer to run that side, because if you screw up one donation amount that you didn't report correctly, that's a $6,000 fine from the FPC or the FEC, depending upon how you set your PAC. So that's, buyer beware caution. If you set up a PAC, make sure you have a professional treasurer running that PAC.
All right, I saw a question.
Thank you, I'm Steve Adrian, income, my client. The nonprofit that public service comes. I think that's. Story came down. I had a client that was a nonprofit public service corporation. I chose membership works for them, did work well, automatic reminders, had a website, and I don't know if it complies to any particular laws that we need. That's another story. But Dems uses another one, it's not the same, so it must be okay for certain Dems. There's two of them that I found, and I looked at all of them. So I think women have to share with people. Great. Yeah.
Excellent.
Thank you, Ray.
Greetings, everybody.
Hope you're okay.
I'm fine. That's a liability for the college. You can sue and get a lot of money. Sorry, you might be interested.
Great, David, really. Actually, the restaurant in California. So there. When it's mentioned if Zelle might be an option, I have no idea who owns Zelle. I hope it would be a conflict of interest, but Zelle is free. At least they don't charge any fees. So I don't know if that's an option that might work for us.
People want to use a credit card. I think people want to be able to use a credit card. So I don't know whether they can do that through Zelle. I've heard it, but I don't.
Yeah, I have well, I have 2 questions. I'll do one and then other folks have shared, I guess. But for your event, Harold, how do you go about curating that list? Was it just paying a membership, or it's not like maybe you got names from your founder who you could work with? How did you kind of build that list to get? Yeah, 95 people coming in, you kind of said hundreds of your list.
Yes and no. We have, I think, about 500, Alan, on our mailing. Our club, we have a little over 200. Our club has a little over 200, but our mailing is about close to 500, and that includes people throughout the county, people beyond the county, who are either elected officials or have been members in a way, or anyway, we get something like 5 people on there. And so that we sent out, information in our newsletter, starting about 4 months or 5 months in advance. And so that was our first source. And then, you know, I had a couple contacts at other clubs that I would send an email directly. And, you know, some of that worked, some of that didn't work, but it was, it's basically using every resource that you got. And part of it is that people say, gee, I'd like to be on your mailing list, but they don't join, keep them on the mailing list. These kinds of things you wanna get there.
Right, and one of the other things I want to touch on that Carol mentioned earlier was, if you do an event and you have an RSVP list, Carol mentioned the fact that, you know, folks don't necessarily RSVP until the last minute. That I think is a San Diego thing. Jason, I think knows this very well. He worked on one of the highly competitive Scott Peters races back in the day, where we were trying to get volunteers in San Diego, and this is apparently not like anywhere else in the country. People do not RSVP even though on precincts until like 24 hours.
I'm telling you that is across the country, because I.
Oh, it is?
People
Okay.
are awful.
Because the D-Triple,
Oh,
well, the only reason I know that is the D-Triple-C, because we also often had to report like what our volunteer rates were for the campaign for the D-Triple-C. Back when Scott was running campaigns that were kind of organized by the D-Triple-C, because it was a top tier race. The D-Triple-C always was like questioning us, why are our volunteer rates so low? And a lot of it is honestly because we can't get people to go walk in San Diego in the summertime, because it's San Diego in the summertime. And it's just San Diego year round, right? But just in general, people here didn't like RSVPing until the last possible day, and that was always a frustration. And they would tell us, like, they'd have races, congressional races in Pennsylvania, where that was the complete opposite, where they would have people sign up like 2 weeks in advance, and they would still come like 2 weeks later. So anyway, I just wanted to.
I mean, I will tell you, I'm a president, a membership chair, and I've worked on fundraising. And getting people to RSVP is worse than bullying. It's just, and it doesn't matter whether it's your personal event, a wedding, a bar mitzvah, or whatever, or something like this. Getting people are, it's gotten worse. It's just terrible. So, Jason.
My voice is Gary. So I was just a couple of notes that I was going to add on the finance side. One, and this goes toward the IRCP. When people have an extensive buy-in, they're more likely to actually do something. So even from a fundraising perspective, even if it's charged $5 a head, as opposed to making something free, you might be a lot more successful in your attendance. Works for fundraising. So think about that if you're doing an event, instead of saying for free, if you're a member, you can do just a nominal amount, but when people have buy-in, more likely to actually go rather than RSVP and then see if there's something better than it. That's number one. Number two, which I can't emphasize enough, because with Carol, I'd love to sponsor events. If you haven't thought about that yet. So if you want to throw a party together for any reason, candidates love to sponsor it. And one thing you do is with the sponsorship levels, you can provide different benefits to the candidate. So if you give me $1,000, you can speak for 3 minutes versus if you give me 500, you can speak for 1 minute versus if you give me. So there, I mean, there's a lot of incentivizing candidate that already wants to get their name out there is looking for ways to spend money. Candidates are ready. It depends on the level that you're looking at. I mean, you're looking at maybe 5,000 to 10,000, the lower level for some school board races up to 100, 200, 300,000. So that's a really good way to bring in money for an event. It's candidate sponsorship, plus they want an excuse to talk to your numbers. And the third one, which Ryan brought up before, I can't emphasize this enough. Tax require professional accountants. I can tell you, being a member of a club that actually ran into some legal troubles based on how they were managing it. It took about 5 years to fix. So it took 5 years to fix without prosecution, just an agreement that there was some stuff going on and it needs to be fixed. It took 5 years without dealing with prosecution. So you really need a professional accountant if you're running a PAC. And something to consider as a professional accountant is probably going to run you anywhere from $1,000 to $2,000 a quarter just your reports. So at a minimum, you need to have a base of about $2,000 every 3 months just to be able to get your report submitted and function properly.
Right, and on that note, like with our club, because our club is a little bit more active on the fundraising side, so we pay our treasurer a little bit more than that because we have so many contributions coming in. If your club only processes maybe, 5 or 10 donations, a month, paying a professional treasurer, maybe they'll either prorate or they'll do like a lower amount because it's not that much work for them. But I cannot stress you enough, if you have a volunteer that knows whenever these dates are that they have to turn in that paperwork, it's not a college paper. It's not like, oh, it's okay if I turn it in the next day. No, you have to get that in the day that it is due. Otherwise, it's a $5,000 fine, potentially, and litigation. Or depending upon if you're embezzling, which is probably not the case, prosecuted, it is a whole headache that you don't want. And then if it only, because the FPPC is so backed up and the FEC is even worse, chances are they may not even find you or get to it until years later when you're probably no longer even running your club, at which point it becomes a headache for whatever, club administration is, 2, 3, 4, 5 years down the road. So it is a
tip for
well, I'm fine. We have a professional treasurer, so unless Stephanie screws something up, that is on her. Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
Okay, so we have one question or?
No. Thank you.
This is Dennis, from East Carolina. Maybe an odd question a little bit, but some of these very impressive fundraising numbers. What do you find to be the best uses for the money you raise, right? Is it some, it's kind of a baseline level of, it doesn't cost that much to ever have monthly meetings, buy a banner, kind of data, nominal expenses of a club. Do you find you're investing by actually, if you have a PAC, kind of spending on campaign activities? Is it more to do mailers to grow the membership? What do you and if you have goals for the numbers, kind of what's the budget about how you're actually spending it?
Right. So for us, because we raise so much, one of the big things that we do are the voter guides that our club puts out every year. So that is something that we absolutely do with our funds. If there's a because we're an LGBT Democratic club, if there's a race, we have either an LGBT incumbent who's under attack. We know a lot of more LGBT elected officials that serve on school boards and elsewhere are constantly under attack because moms for liberty bullshit. Or if we have like an assembly member or a state senator who's LGBT who is, under attack and in a competitive race because of redistricting, we would tend to focus on those campaigns specifically because we are a PAC, we can't coordinate. That's if you have a PAC and you endorse a candidate and you want to do mailers in support of any of the candidates that you endorse, you cannot, after you do the endorsement, you cannot pick up the phone, call candidate so-and-so and say, hey, we're going to do a mailer for you. That's coordinating with a PAC, and that will also get you prosecuted. So, right. So to answer your question, and again, so one of the things I think with like Claremont Dems, which does not have a PAC, so one of the things that we use the money for at Claremont Dems, our membership dues, is we sponsor community events. So we have Claremont Family Day that's coming up where we spend, maybe $250, $300 on the sponsorship, and we get a booth, and that's a way to generate membership. There's the Claremont Garden Tour, which is a big fundraiser for the Claremont Town Council, which is like our community advocacy organization. They host that every year. So we'll do like a $250 sponsorship for that. So if you're a club that doesn't have a PAC, you've got money in the bank, want to spend that, again, you can't really spend it on political activity because then you definitely need to set up a PAC. But if you want to spend that money on helping community organizations in your community, you absolutely can do that because it's not necessarily political.
And I will say the answer from our point, a large part of what we start thinking monthly cost of staying, as a club, rent a room at school on a monthly basis. That costs us $300 a month. $500. Anyway, so we pay several dollars a month for that. We have a website. We have various other monthly expenses. And then we also participate in the fall and spring festivals in San Marcos. And we are very active. We have a very active community action group, which helps to raise food for. And we're very active in the community, so that there are other things like that. But a large reason that we did this fundraiser was just the basic monthly cost to keep the club going and give us that.
Jason, you have a question?
No, I'll just add one other point to it, because a lot of people aren't aware of this one. I see a leak, and what they do is how we're gonna go. Clubs can actually contribute directly to campaigns. I'll repeat that. Clubs can contribute directly to campaigns as long as your total giving is under $2,000. So the reason that I throw that out there is I would highly encourage clubs to think about contributions to the down ballot candidate that don't always get attention. So we're seeing everything that's going on in the school boards right now. You can directly to your club endorsed school board candidate as long as the cumulative contributions aren't over 2,000. So you can go 500 to one, 500 to another, just the contribution is less than 2,000. You can give directly to local candidates under the club. But you have to it's not right to do it. We can say not candidates. So you have section.
Yeah. So, okay, so we're getting to late, sorry, we have 5 is our timeline. Okay, so, okay, question, question up front, question in the back. I think,
The last, you can take as much time as.
I think that, so the questions back with the front here, let's start from the back and go up to the front, so.
If the goal is the candidate will help you ultimately bring in more donations, but then you're asking to solve for the day, like I guess I can balance those things. If one thing candidate comes, you know, they'll bring it, so you're asking them to pay as well. Yeah.
Right, so that gets into a little bit more technicality things. So the way that we typically do it at Dems for Quality is we usually get our elected officials that are not necessarily candidates, but they're already elected to help us with that fundraising, because that way we don't get into, campaign coordination with, specific candidates. The technicality of that, I would imagine if there's multiple candidates potentially running for the same office, or if there's candidates running for multiple candidates running for different offices, I think you could do that without getting into the situation where you would be, coordinating with a PAC with, candidate control committees and all of that.
Technicality perspective, but in your candidate, the idea of asking a candidate sponsor, knowing that you're also using them a little bit to fundraise for your club, is that
Right, well, candidates can do it. Candidates too, because I know the candidates do it for the Roosevelt dinner all the time. I think and they do it even without the party endorsement. So,
they're cool with it, not a weird thing to happen.
Yeah, again, if you do that, I would suggest talking to somebody that is a professional treasurer that knows campaign finance. Again, the one thing you want to make sure you do with any campaign finance, with any political financing, is just make sure that you're not breaking any kind of campaign finance laws, because again, that becomes a situation and a headache that you absolutely do not want to deal with.
Yeah. We did approach a couple of the elected officials who represent our districts. And I will say we got a donation from Scott Pierce, who's our congressman. Brian Shine is our representative. He did not make a donation, but he for a couple of things. He did either donations and or proclamations to honor our honorees. We did have a couple of other elected officials are not in our district who knew Betty and made donations, and they made them as a friend. So I think, and I do not know. I yield to both you, Ryan, and to Jason, who are far more knowledgeable on realities of this. I think if you're reaching out and saying, hey, we're having this event and your friend is being honored to make a donation, I suspect that we're not going to see any of that.
So we have one, so I guess we have one question here. Question.
I can't stress enough how important to have a person to do your filing. I'm a labor Dems treasurer, but there's no IEN, nothing complicated there, it's just check. But I'm currently the county CTA PAC treasurer. And I can tell you, you have to really be on it.
Yeah.
Because if you aren't, you will get fined if it's a day late. You have to constantly be putting things in there. And I can't believe CTA is just like, hey, let's just have volunteers do it, because I'm a volunteer.
Right.
But there is not that many people that have that, even that knowledge that even within the CTA, I'm like, can we train some people? Okay, and then you go fly to a political action committee thing for CTA, and there's no one there to train you.
Right.
So I had to learn it all on my own, reading guides and all that. And there's still every now and then a mistake because there's an annual fee you have to pay January 15th. But if you don't get a communication tree and that letter gets you late, now I have to do a $200 cashier's check because I fucking sent it late.
Yeah.
So
exactly.
I mean, but there's no, I can't stress an entire school.
And then there's a situation where if you think, oh, I'll just submit this online, I don't have to mail this to Sacramento. Oh, no, you absolutely have to mail it in.
Mail what to Sacramento?
Paper.
See, like that's,
Yeah.
I do them electronically, so
Well, see,
I mail nothing.
right, and I think the electronic only is if you're dealing with like large donations, like for like tutorial campaign stuff or like statewide campaign stuff, but like if it's a local office, you can, and you have the option to file online, you still need to do the paper copy for the paper trail.
So I think we have one more question, comment.
The appointees and elected in the state of California are in the around that.
Yes.
And now, like, county had 2,000. We have to be very, very careful and not share, not just to tell the truth, but you can't talk about issues that we're under and all this stuff. So sometimes with presentations that one has to make to be reflective. And when I update, I try to stick to the meeting minutes. You know what I mean? Can't get in trouble there.
Right.
So, I mean, can't speculate. This is what we're working on.
So,
Mhm. Yeah.
So we're doing a little past 5. I guess we'll go into closing comments. Anything you want to say?
Basically, I'm amazed and honored to be here. Hope this has been of some help to you. One of my goals, in volunteering to be fundraising chair and working on this was to reach out to other clubs and work more collaboratively. Because especially in North County, boss, good at you. But I think all of our clubs, if we work together, I think we'd be far more productive. One of the things that I've worked on is trying to make sure that we use local vendors. And that's something that I feel is really important as much as possible. I stuck with people in San Marcos. I probably could have gone outside, but I want the people, I want the suppliers and the community in our community to know that we support them, because Republicans get too much credit for being business friendly. And we need to make sure that businesses in our community know we support them. And I also think that it's really important to model our values. We were super careful about not using lots of paper goods, of not using lots of plastic. One of the reasons we had cupcakes instead of big cake was because you didn't have to cut it. We have more forks and things like that. So it's being conscious. If you've got values that are important to your club, model those in your event so that everything that you do is represented to the community. And this is another place where you can actually model that, what you're saying, walk the walk.
Right, and to add on top of that, there's like our allies in labor, like if there's folks that you know in labor, either the carpenters, laborers, like individual unions, or even the labor council itself, the building trades, if you ask, maybe they won't give you, everything that you ask for, but at least put in the ask, because a lot of the labor unions, the labor is the backbone of the Democratic Party. The other thing I would say on that makes that ask easier is that if you do print materials for your clubs, either externally or whatever, If you're not using a union printer, always have it say printed in-house, labor donated, or if you are able to get your stuff union printed, that's always the way to go. Because then when you make that ask to any of the labor unions or the labor council for any kind of financial support for a fundraiser, they're more likely willing to give to, what they would consider labor-friendly organizations. But they're probably not going to give, and again, I don't speak for labor, but a labor union, I would imagine, would not be wanting to give money to an organization that doesn't stand by those values. And that could just be like a volunteer error or something, but that's just something to also be cognizant of too.
I'd like to thank both our panelists today. Fight Like Hell Forum is going to be Tuesday, September 12th from 6 to 7:30 p.m. You look that up on Facebook. That is the Fight Like Hell West Coast Book Tour 2023. Again, thank you all for staying with us during this long day for everyone, but really valuable. Panelists, thank you so much for participating. Please give high fives and praise to Sarah. This was her idea, and I think it's something. Well said.